"I will defend him." The maid saved the count after his lawyer abandoned him in court. "Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from." The murmur in the courtroom sounded to Margaret like the sea she had crossed as a child, restless and unkind. Voices rolled and broke against the high walls, rising whenever someone recognized a face or repeated a rumor. Above it all, the magistrates sat in their wigs and robes, their expressions grave, as if human misfortune were something they measured by habit. She stood at the very back, where servants were meant to stand, the wooden rail pressed into her fingers. If she leaned a little to the left, she could see him. Edward Hawthorne, Earl of Hawthorne, stood alone at the bench reserved for the accused. His coat was perfectly cut, his cravat precisely tied, but there was a tightness about his shoulders she had never seen before. He kept his gaze straight ahead, chin lifted, but Margaret could tell that his throat moved when he swallowed, the way it did when he was angry or holding back words. She had polished that very coat only yesterday, in the quiet of his dressing room. She had never imagined it would be the coat he wore to answer for his honor. A man in a dark gown, the clerk, called for silence. The murmur faded into a low buzz. "The Crown against Edward Hawthorne," he intoned. "Charge, fraud in matters of financial instruments and contracts." Another man rose to speak, a heavy figure with sharp eyes and a carefully arranged wig. Margaret knew his name only because she had heard it whispered all week in the servants' hall. "Mr. Fielding for the prosecution," someone near her muttered. "He never loses." The magistrate in the center inclined his head. "Proceed, Mr. Fielding." Fielding stepped forward with the ease of a man accustomed to being listened to. "My lord, gentlemen of the court," he began, his voice clear, "we are not here to attack a title, nor to question the ancient name of Hawthorne. We are here because the law has been mocked. Large sums, entrusted for public dealings, have vanished. Contracts have been altered, and the hand that signed the order sits before you now." He extended one arm toward Edward, like a host presenting a guest. Margaret's fingers tightened round the rail. Edward did not flinch. His lawyer stood at his side, a thin man with pale hair and a neat stack of papers before him. Mr. Silas Trent. His face always reminded Margaret of a drawn curtain. Nothing behind it showed. "We shall demonstrate," Fielding said, "that Lord Hawthorne knowingly signed false instruments, that he profited from these abuses, and that when the scheme began to unravel, he sought to lay the blame upon others." He lifted a page from his table. "Here, my lord, is the first contract dated the 12th of April. It bears the seal of Hawthorne and the signature of the Earl himself. You will see there the terms under which funds were redirected." Margaret shifted her weight, fighting the instinct to shake her head. 12th of April. She knew that date. "You did not sign," she thought, her heart beginning to beat harder. "You refused. I saw you." The words were no more than breath in her chest. Beside Edward, Mr. Trent pretended not to be listening. He glanced down at his own bundle of documents, fingers resting lightly on the tied ribbon. He looked, Margaret thought, like a man waiting in a tea room, bored by the conversation, eager to be elsewhere. Fielding continued, building his case, piece upon piece. Each time he lifted another contract and spoke of figures and seals and dates, the low hum behind Margaret swelled and then fell again. Noblemen in the better benches leaned toward one another, whispering. Merchants in plainer coats frowned, counting silently. A lady with a fur-trimmed cloak raised her fan to hide her smile when Fielding made a pointed remark about trust misplaced in high-born hands. Margaret tried to listen, but the words blurred. All she heard, over and over, was that date, the 12th of April, that night in the study, the light from the fire, the paper in his hand, the way he had put his pen down and said, in that quiet, hard voice he used when he was resolute, "No," the clerk called. Silence in the gallery, though no one had spoken loudly. It felt to Margaret as if the whole room were leaning over a cliff. The magistrate turned finally to the defense. "Mr. Trent," he said, "you may answer." The curtain-faced man uncurled himself from his place. He did not look at Edward. He did not look at the crowd. He looked only at the magistrates. "My lord," he began, then stopped, his lips pressed together. Edward turned his head, just barely. Margaret saw the movement. "My lord," Trent said again, and this time his voice sounded strained, as if something pulled at it from inside. "It is with the greatest reluctance that I must request leave to withdraw from this case." The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. For a heartbeat there was no sound at all. Then the courtroom broke into a roar of voices. "Withdraw? In the midst of it? What does that mean? Abandoned, has he?" Margaret could not even breathe. Edward's head turned fully now, his gaze fixed on the man at his side. "Withdraw?" one of the magistrates repeated. "On what grounds, Mr. Trent? You have prepared the defense, have you not?" Trent swallowed. His hands, she noticed, were perfectly steady. "My lord, new information has come to my attention which renders it impossible for me to continue as counsel without risking impropriety. I beg the court's indulgence. I cannot in honesty speak for the accused." He did not say, "I cannot defend the innocent." He said, "I cannot speak for him." Edward's voice cut across the room, quiet but unmistakable. "Trent," he said, "what information? You will explain yourself." "My lord," Trent answered, still addressing the bench, "it is not in the best interest of the court that I should specify. I ask only to be discharged." "Not in the best interest of the court," someone sneered from the benches. "Not in the best interest of his fee, more like," murmured a merchant. "Silence," the magistrate snapped. He conferred in low tones with the others, while the room buzzed like an angry hive. Margaret stared at Trent from his powdered hair to the fall of his cuffs, trying to see any sign of conscience. She saw nothing. Again, she thought, because her mind could not move past the last few minutes. Again, he stands alone. "Lord Hawthorne," the magistrate said at last, raising his voice, "your counsel seeks to withdraw. Have you alternative representation?" Edward's jaw tightened. "I engaged Mr. Trent upon the advice of men I trusted," he said. "If he has discovered a reason not to fulfill that duty, he has not shared it with me. I have no replacement ready to step forward." The magistrate's brows drew together. "Mr. Trent, your request places this court in a most awkward position," he said. "We stand in the midst of hearing serious charges. The accused cannot be left without any form of defense." Fielding spoke smoothly. "My lord, no one compels Lord Hawthorne to retain counsel. He is a man of intelligence. He may answer for himself if he chooses. The law does not forbid it." The suggestion seemed to please the crowd. There was a ripple of laughter, quickly stifled. Edward lifted his chin a fraction higher. "I will not beg any man to stand beside me who would rather walk away," he said, the words low but clear. He turned back to the bench. "If the court insists on proceeding today, I will speak for myself." The magistrate hesitated. His gaze swept over the packed room, took in the restless mood. "This matter has already occupied much time," he said. "The interests at stake are not trivial." "Very well. Lord Hawthorne, you will answer. Mr. Trent, the court notes your withdrawal with great displeasure." Trent bowed, relieved, and stepped back. He gathered his papers with neat, unhurried movements. Without looking once at Edward, he left the bench and walked toward the side door. Margaret watched him go, her heart pounding. A fine lawyer, leaving his client in the middle of the storm. What sort of man does that? The door closed behind him with a soft, final sound. The magistrate nodded toward the prosecution. "Mr. Fielding, you may proceed." Fielding did not hide his satisfaction. "My lord, I have a few more questions, now that his lordship will answer in his own person," he said. "Lord Hawthorne, do you acknowledge that the signatures on these contracts are yours?" Copies of the contracts were brought forward. The clerk placed them before Edward. From the back of the courtroom, Margaret could not see the ink, but she could see Edward's hands as he picked up the sheets. They were steady. He studied the topmost page, then the next. "They resemble my hand," he said. "Do you deny that they are yours?" Fielding pressed. Edward lifted his gaze. "I deny that I ever agreed to the terms described therein," he answered. "I deny that I knowingly authorized the redirection of funds, and I deny that I signed any such contract on the 12th of April. Fielding spread his hands, as if appealing to an invisible audience. "My lord," he said, "the date is plainly written. Will the Earl suggest that someone has forged not only his signature, but invented this entirely? And yet these contracts were honored by the very institutions that recognize his seal." The magistrate looked at Edward with cool curiosity. "What evidence do you offer to support your denial?" he asked. The court cannot weigh your word alone against documents properly executed. Edward hesitated. Margaret could almost see the battle in his mind. He had never been a man to plead. She had heard him once tell his steward, "We will show them the accounts. We will not beg." "My conduct in other matters," he said finally. "My record of dealings. My lack of profit from these exchanges. Those who have known me—" Fielding interrupted. "My lord, with respect, we are not here to praise character," he said. "We are here to examine facts. The Earl would ask us to ignore written evidence in favor of his recollection. Yet the dates, the figures, the signatures are clear. If he did not sign, who did? His man of business? A servant?" The last word carried a weight of scorn. Servant. The sound seemed to travel down the long room and strike Margaret full in the chest. Her hands were shaking now. She pressed them harder into the rail. "He did not sign," she thought again. "You refused? I saw you refuse." The magistrate sighed as if already weary of the case. "Lord Hawthorne," he said, "unless you can produce some explanation beyond general protest, this court may be compelled to accept the documents before us as valid. We are not inclined to believe that seals and signatures appear on contracts by magic." Fielding dipped his head, satisfied. "The Crown contends, my lord," he said, "that the simplest explanation is the true one. The Earl signed, profited, and now seeks to hide behind confusion." The murmurs began anew. In the front benches, a lady leaned toward her companion. "Imagine," she whispered loudly enough for Margaret to hear, "to see an old name dragged like this, and with no one to defend him now, not even Trent." Margaret's breath came shorter and shorter. "He will be condemned," she thought, "for something he did not do. And I am standing here knowing the night, the paper, the words he spoke." A memory rose, clear and unwelcome. She had entered his study with a tray that night in April. The candles had burned low. Papers had covered his desk. A man had sat opposite him, coat creased from travel, hat on his knee. Margaret had recognized Mr. Trent. She had set down the tray, eyes lowered, but she had seen enough. Edward had said, "You asked me to sign what I do not fully understand. I will not." Trent had smiled his thin, courtly smile and urged, but Edward had refused. Later, after the study door closed, she had passed the corridor again and heard voices behind it. Another man with Trent, perhaps, and days after that, the fragment she had found caught behind the cabinet with the Hawthorne seal half torn. "It was the 12th, she whispered under her breath now. "It was that night." Her heart thudded. She remembered, too, the warnings in the servants' hall. Servants who meddled where they should not could be turned out with nothing. Or worse. Servants' words were easy to twist. At the bench, the magistrate was speaking again. "If there is no further evidence," he said, "the court will retire to consider." The words blurred. Margaret was no longer listening. Something inside her had moved past fear. It felt like stepping into cold water. Once both feet were in, there would be no going back. "No one will speak for him," she thought. "Then I must." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "My lord." No one heard. She took a breath that hurt and tried again, louder this time. "My lord, if you please." Heads turned. The nearest clerk frowned, looking around. "Who spoke?" "Silence, girl," he snapped, without even finding her. Margaret lifted her chin, though she could feel her cheeks burning. "My lord magistrate," she said, and this time her voice rose above the buzz. "I beg you will hear me. I have something to say in Lord Hawthorne's defense." The courtroom fell into a strange hush, as if even the air were shocked. Hundreds of eyes swung toward the back. A path of stairs opened around her. She felt it as a physical thing, like a wind pushing against her. The magistrate peered in her direction, shading his eyes. "Who is speaking?" he demanded. "This is not a public conversation. Only parties to the case may address the court." Margaret swallowed. "My name is Margaret Doyle, my lord," she called. "I am in service in Lord Hawthorne's household." A ripple of amusement and disbelief swept through the room. "A maid," someone said, and laughter followed. "An Irish maid, by the sound," another added, not quite under his breath. The magistrate's expression hardened. "A servant," he said. "This is outrageous. The gallery will remain silent, or I will have it cleared." Margaret's knees felt weak, but her hands clung to the rail as if it were the only solid thing in the world. "Please, my lord," she said. "I was in the house on the night of the 12th of April. I brought a tray to Lord Hawthorne's study. I saw a paper placed before him, and I saw him refuse to sign it. The laughter died. Even Fielding's composed face shifted, just slightly. Edward turned in his place. His eyes found her across the distance, astonished, dark with something she could not name. "Miss Doyle," he said, almost under his breath, but she saw his lips form her name. The magistrate banged his hand on the table. "This is not the manner of proper testimony," he said sharply. "You cannot call out from the back of the room like a hawker in the street." "My lord," Margaret said, her voice shaking now, "I beg pardon for my boldness, but if the court will not hear me, you may condemn an innocent man." Fielding stepped forward, clearly displeased. "My lord, are we to let every chambermaid in London dictate our proceedings?" he asked. "If the witness is in service to the accused, her interests are obvious. We cannot have the court turned into a servants' hall." The words stung, but Margaret did not lower her eyes. "I am in his service, yes," she said, forcing each word out. "But I do not lie for him. I tell you only what I saw." The magistrate raised a hand for silence. "Enough," he said. "Miss Doyle, if that is your name, you will either approach properly and be sworn, or you will hold your tongue. This outcry is unseemly." Margaret's heart lurched. "Approach, stand before them all, swear. There would be no taking it back afterward. Every person in that room would know her face, her name, her place." She stepped away from the rail. The people around her shuffled aside, some curious, some amused, some disdainful. She moved down the narrow aisle, conscious of every eye. As she passed the better benches, she saw Lady Agatha Hawthorne sitting rigid, lips pressed together, eyes fixed straight ahead, as if she did not recognize the maid from her own morning room. Near the corner of the room, she caught a glimpse of Lord Charles Hawthorne, Edward's cousin. He was leaning back, arms folded, watching with a faint, unreadable smile. The magistrate spoke again. "Bring the girl forward," he said to the clerk. "If we are to suffer this interruption, let us at least give it proper form." Margaret reached the front. The clerk held out a small book and repeated the words of the oath. Her hand trembled as she placed it there, but she forced her voice steady. "I swear to tell the truth," she said. "So far as I know it." "You are Margaret Doyle," the magistrate said. "Age?" 22, my lord. "In service to Lord Hawthorne for how long?" 3 years, my lord." He regarded her a moment longer, as if measuring the weight of her. "You say you carried a tray to Lord Hawthorne's study on the night of the 12th of April, he said. "You saw a paper. Describe what you saw and be precise." Margaret drew in a breath. "There was a gentleman with him, my lord," she said. "Mr. Trent, his man of law." A paper lay upon the desk. Mr. Trent asked his lordship to sign. Lord Hawthorne took up his pen, then set it down. He said, "I will not sign what I do not understand, not tonight." He pushed the paper back. Mr. Trent urged him again. I heard him ask, but Lord Hawthorne did not sign. I saw the paper remain without his hand upon it. Her words came out in a rush, as if she feared they would be taken away. Fielding frowned. "My lord," he said, "the girl speaks of refusing to sign on one particular night. She cannot know what transpired later. The contract may have been signed on another occasion." Margaret shook her head. "The date, my lord," she said quickly. "Mr. Trent spoke of it. He said, 'We must settle this matter before the 12th is done.' I remember it because I had to count the days for washing, and the paper, when I saw a piece of it later, bore that date." Fielding's gaze sharpened. "Saw a piece later?" he repeated. "What do you mean, girl?" Margaret faltered. She had not meant to mention that. Old fear stirred, the memory of the torn fragment hidden away. "There was a scrap," she said, "caught behind the cabinet. I recognized the seal. I thought it had fallen." The magistrate leaned forward. "Do you have this scrap?" he asked. Margaret's throat went dry. "No, my lord," she lied, the word barely audible. "I took it at first. Then I was afraid. I put it away. I did not understand. I did not know it mattered." "You tampered with a document." Fielding seized upon the admission. "How you admit to taking it?" "No," she protested, alarmed. "I only picked it up. It was torn already. I thought—" "Enough," the magistrate murmured, holding up a hand. "We will not digress into fragments of paper in this moment." He turned in his seat, speaking to his fellow magistrates in low tones. A minute passed. Margaret stood motionless, palms damp, heartbeat loud in her ears. At last, he faced the court again. "This testimony, though irregularly introduced, cannot be dismissed outright," he said. "It is possible that the circumstances of the signing are not as straightforward as they appear. The court will not deliver judgment today." A wave of whispers broke out, half relief, half frustration. "We will recall this witness," the magistrate continued. "Miss Doyle, you will attend this court again when summoned, and be prepared to answer further questions. Lord Hawthorne, you will remain at liberty under the conditions previously set until we have examined these new claims." He rapped on the table. "The court is adjourned." Chairs creaked. People rose, talking at once. Some craned their necks to stare at Margaret as if she were some curious animal come out of the wild. Others looked past her already, hungry for the next piece of gossip to carry into the streets. Edward turned toward her. For a moment, their eyes met across the now stirring space. There was gratitude there, and something like disbelief, and an edge of wounded pride that made her cheeks burn. She dropped her gaze and stepped back, the clerk motioning her away from the front. She felt suddenly very small in the great room, as if it might close over her head. "You have done it now," she thought. "There is no hiding." As she reached the side door where witnesses were to leave, the crowd pressing all around, she felt it, the weight of a gaze not like the others. It did not pass over her and move on. It settled, steady and cool, as if measuring her worth. She looked up just once and saw Lord Charles watching her from across the room, his eyes fixed on her with a calm that made her shiver, and in that instant she understood that by opening her mouth she had drawn the attention of someone who might have every reason to wish her silent. The courtroom emptied in waves. Voices spilled into the corridor, echoing off stone, running ahead of the people who made them. "Did you see her? A maid!" In open court, no less. Only proves how desperate he is. A maid defending an earl. Margaret kept her gaze on the flagstones as she was guided out by a bailiff. He did not speak to her unkindly, only motioned with his hand. "This way, miss," he said. "You will be sent word when you are needed again." She nodded, though she had no idea how such things were done. No one had ever summoned her to a court before. She felt very small between the tall walls and the press of bodies. At the stairwell, she saw a familiar figure waiting. Mrs. Baines, the Hawthorne housekeeper, her bonnet tied tightly, her lips likewise. "There you are," Mrs. Baines said. "Come along. Their lordships are at the carriage. You are not to lag behind and be stared at like an exhibition." Margaret followed her down the steps into the pale London light. The Hawthorne carriage stood by the curb, dark paint gleaming, the coachman stiff on his box. A small crowd had gathered at a distance, not close enough to be driven off, not far enough to be polite. "That is he," someone said, as Edward emerged from a side door, his hat low, shoulders very straight. "The one with the maid." Lady Agatha was already inside the carriage, veil lowered. Lord Charles stood nearby, his gloved hands behind his back, calm as ever. He bowed slightly to Edward. "A trying morning, cousin," he said. "We must hope the magistrates are not swayed by theatrics." Edward's mouth tightened. "I will not discuss it in the street," he said. He stepped into the carriage. Mrs. Baines touched Margaret's arm. "You go up with James," she said, nodding toward the second, plainer carriage behind the first. "His lordship's carriage is for family." "Of course," Margaret murmured. As she turned, she felt another gaze upon her. She glanced back against her better judgment and found Lord Charles watching her again. He did not smile, did not frown, only inclined his head as if in acknowledgement, then turned away to mount his horse. Inside the second carriage, a footman named James sat opposite her. He was young, with anxious eyes. "Margaret," he said as the horses started forward, "you spoke in there." "Yes," she said quietly. "In front of everyone," he insisted, as if she might not have noticed. "My sister says people get locked up for less if they anger the wrong folk." "I do not know what will be done," Margaret answered. "I only know what I saw." James shook his head, half in awe, half in fear. "I never saw the like," he said. "An Irish maid standing up to magistrates. They will be telling that story from here to the river." Margaret folded her hands tightly in her lap so he would not see them tremble. "Let them tell it as they please," she said. I could not keep still. They rode in silence after that, the wheels rattling over cobbles. Margaret watched the city pass. Shops, narrow lanes, children darting between carts. People turned to stare at the carriages, guessing who sat inside, constructing tales. She wondered how long it would be before her name appeared in those tales, twisted beyond recognition. At the Hawthorne townhouse, the front door opened before the carriages had fully stopped. Servants lined the hall as they did for any important arrival, but there was an edge to their posture now, a tightness round the mouth. Edward stepped down first, offering his hand to Lady Agatha. She accepted it, but did not look at him. "Have my writing table prepared," she told a footman. "I may have letters to send." Her voice was clipped, her expression hidden by the veil. Margaret slipped around to the side entrance, as she always did. Mrs. Baines followed close, her skirts rustling. "In my parlour," the housekeeper said. Now, the parlour was small, lined with neat shelves and a clock that ticked very loudly in the sudden quiet. Mrs. Baines closed the door. "What possessed you?" she asked without preamble. Margaret clasped her hands in front of her. "I saw what they spoke of," she said. "I could not stand by and say nothing, Mrs. Baines." "It is not the place of a maid to decide such things," Mrs. Baines snapped. "Courts and magistrates and papers with seals, these are matters for gentlemen. You have put your nose where it does not belong." "There was no one else to speak," Margaret said. "You saw how Mr. Trent left his lordship." Mrs. Baines's eyes softened for a moment, then sharpened again. "I do not say the lawyer behaved well," she answered, "but that is not our concern. Our concern is this house, this staff, and the reputation that keeps us in employment. Do you think it will help us that the town now says Hawthorne, the house whose servants stand up in court like fishwives?" "They may also say," Margaret replied quietly, "that someone told the truth." Mrs. Baines sighed. "You are too proud for your own good," she said. "Irish and proud. It is a dangerous mixture here, Margaret." Margaret felt the words like a small slap, though Mrs. Baines had not raised her hand. "Am I to leave?" Margaret asked softly. "If I must go, tell me and I will pack." Mrs. Baines hesitated. "I have had no such instruction," she said, "but do not think it cannot come. Her ladyship is in no temper to be crossed today. Keep to your duties. Avoid the front of the house. And if anyone questions you, you say nothing more than yes, madam, and no, madam. Do you hear me?" "I hear," Margaret said. She turned to go, then paused. "Mrs. Baines," she asked, "would you have kept silent?" The housekeeper did not answer at once. She looked at the small window, where the grey light crept in. "I have kept my place these 30 years, she said finally. "That is all I know." Margaret left the room with that answer in her mind, not sure whether it comforted or troubled her more. Upstairs, beyond polished doors, another conversation was unfolding. Edward stood by the drawing-room window, his hand on the back of a chair. Lady Agatha faced him from the hearth, veil thrown back now, her expression sharp. "How you have made a spectacle of us," she said. "Do you understand that, Edward? A spectacle. I could not hold my head up in that courtroom." "It seems to me my head was the one upon the block," he answered dryly. A tiny colour rose in her cheeks. "Do not jest," she said. "Nothing about this is amusing." "I do not find it amusing," he said. "I find it intolerable. I went to court today to hear the charges answered by the man I engaged for that very purpose. Instead, I was abandoned like a debtor who could not pay his fee. And you allowed a maid to take his place," she said, "in front of everyone. Do you not understand what that looks like?" "It looks," he said, "as if she possessed more courage than he did." Lady Agatha drew herself up. "She is a servant," she said, "an Irish servant. Her word in such a place counts for nothing. Yet she spoke as if she could sway the law with a few simple phrases. It is impertinent." "You heard the magistrate," Edward replied. "He did not dismiss her entirely. He tolerated her because the court likes a little drama now and then," Lady Agatha said. "They will talk of it over dinner and then forget. They will not forget that the Hawthorne name now sits in the same sentence as Maid and fraud." Edward's hand tightened on the chair. The word fraud still stung, even in his aunt's mouth. "What would you have had me do?" he asked. "Send her back to the gallery when she might hold some part of the truth I need. Refuse her voice because her gown is plain. I would have had you control your household better," Lady Agatha said. "No servant should feel so free as to interrupt magistrates. If you do not command respect, how do you expect society to give it?" "I am less concerned at present with society," he said, "than with avoiding prison." She flinched at the word. "Do not speak of such things," she whispered. "It is spoken of in every coffee house in London already," he said. "We must at least be honest among ourselves." She sat down abruptly, as if tired. "Honest?" she murmured. "Very well. Here is honesty. You must put distance between yourself and that girl. Edward stared at her. Distance? He repeated. She has thrust herself into a matter that can only harm her, Lady Agatha said. If she is seen about town as your champion, people will sneer. They will say you hide behind a servant's apron. Dismiss her. Send her to some respectable situation in the country. Give her a reference if you wish, but she must not remain here to draw more eyes. So I am to repay loyalty with dismissal, Edward said. Is that your advice? Loyalty, she echoed. We do not know that. We know only that she spoke without permission at a time that suited her, not you. She has put her word into a matter of contracts she cannot understand. For all we know, she may bring further trouble. Edward turned back to the window. Outside, the street looked much as it always did. He wondered if every passerby was already thinking of him when they glanced up at his windows. I will not turn her out, he said. Not now. Lady Agatha's mouth thinned. You are stubborn, she said. It was your father's trait and it did him no good. He let the remark pass. I will speak with her, he said. I will learn exactly what she knows. And until the court releases me from this accusation, the household remains as it is. You will regret indulging such sentiment, she warned. Perhaps, he said, but I would regret ingratitude more. She rose, smoothing her skirts. Very well, she said. Do as you please. But when the invitations cease and old friends find they have business elsewhere, do not say you were not warned. She left the room with the sound of her gown skimming the carpet. Later, when the house had settled into its afternoon rhythm, a footman came quietly to the servants' hall. Margaret, he said, lingering at the door, his lordship wishes to see you in the study. The room fell silent. Every face turned toward her. Mrs. Baines looked at her sharply. Wipe your hands, she said, though Margaret's hands were already clean. Straighten your cap, mind your tongue. Margaret did as she was told, then followed the footman upstairs, past rooms she usually entered only to clean. The study door loomed ahead, the same door she had approached with a tray that April night. The footman knocked. Enter, Edward's voice answered. Margaret stepped inside. The study was much as she remembered. Shelves, a large desk, the faint smell of paper and ink. Edward stood by the fire, his coat discarded, his cravat loosened slightly. He looked, she thought, older than he had yesterday, though she knew that made no sense. He nodded to the footman, who withdrew, closing the door. Miss Doyle, Edward said, come here, if you please. She came forward, stopping at a respectful distance. You sent for me, my lord, she said. I did, he answered. I believe I owe you thanks. She looked up in surprise. For what I did in court, she asked. What you did in court kept the magistrate from handing down judgment today, he said. Whether that proves to be to my benefit, we shall see. But you did not have to speak. You did at some risk to yourself. I recognize that. She felt her face grow warm. I could not stand and hear them say what was not true, she said. I saw that night. He watched her closely. Tell me again, he said, in your own words. From the beginning, she took a breath. I came to this room with a tray, she said. There was a gentleman with you, Mr. Trent. He had papers. He asked you to sign. You took up your pen, but then you asked about the terms. He said there was no time to explain everything, and that you should trust him. You put the pen down. You said, I will not sign what I do not understand. Not tonight. You pushed the paper away. You sent me out. Later I heard voices again, but I could not see who was here. You are certain it was that date? He asked. Yes, my lord, she said. You spoke of the 12th yourself. You said you had already had a long day of accounts. And Mr. Trent said something like, it must be done before the 12th is out. I remember because I had washing to do the next morning and counted the days. He paced once, then stopped, and later, he said slowly, you found a piece of the paper. Her fingers tightened in her apron. Yes, my lord, she admitted. A scrap behind the cabinet with the seal. I did not understand what it was. I should have brought it at once. I did not. Do you still have it? He asked. She hesitated. Yes, she said finally. In my room. Hidden. Why did you not bring it when you first heard the charges against me? He asked. His tone was not harsh, but it held weight. She lifted her eyes to his. Because I heard the others talk, she said. They said servants who meddle in papers can be blamed for anything missing. that it is easy to say a maid took what was not hers. I thought if I went to anyone with a scrap of your paper, they might say I stole it, or say I had forged it. I was afraid, my lord." He exhaled slowly. "And today?" he asked. "Were you not afraid today?" "I was," she said simply, "but I was more afraid of seeing you condemned when I knew it was not as they said." Silence stretched between them. The fire murmured softly. "You have put yourself in a difficult position," he said at last. "The prosecution will say your word is biased. They will question your character. They may ask you why you waited, why you touched the paper at all." "I know," she said. "Yet you spoke," he said. "Yes," she answered. He looked at her for a long moment. "You should have come to me sooner," he said, not unkindly. "I might have taken the scrap to my own counsel before this circus began." "I did not trust Mr. Trent," she said quietly, surprising herself. He raised an eyebrow. "No?" he asked. "Why?" "He looked at me that night as if I were furniture," she said. "And later, when the first letter came about the case, I saw him in the hallway. He passed me without a word, though I stood aside. It is nothing, perhaps, but I felt he would not believe me if I spoke, that he would say, 'I misheard.'" Edward's mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. "You judged his character more keenly than I did, it seems," he said. She shook her head. "I did not mean—" "Peace," he said. "I am not offended. I engaged him because he was recommended, not because I liked him. That may have been folly." He moved to the desk, then stopped again. "This scrap," he said. "Keep it where it is for now. Do not speak of it to anyone, not even Mrs. Baines. When the court summons you again, we will consider how best to introduce it if we must." "Yes, my lord," she said. He studied her face once more. "They will press you hard," he said quietly. "Are you certain you wish to continue? It is not too late to withdraw, to tell the magistrate you were mistaken." Her stomach clenched at the thought of facing that room again, that sea of faces. "I am certain of what I saw," she said. "I cannot unsay it now, and I would be ashamed to try." A flicker of something like respect touched his eyes. "Very well," he said. "Then we shall stand together in it." The words surprised them both. He cleared his throat. "You may go," he added. "Attend to your duties. And Miss Doyle—" "Yes, my lord," she said. "If anyone troubles you because of this," he said, "you are to tell me at once." She nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. "Thank you, my lord," she said. When she left the study, the corridor seemed slightly less daunting, as if the dark wood had eased its frown by a degree. News from the court rippled through the house faster than any footman could run. By evening, even the scullery maids knew the phrase, "the maid who defended the Earl." Some repeated it with awe, others with a giggle. "Imagine speaking up like that," one girl said over the dishwater. "I would faint on the spot." "She will be dismissed," another predicted. "You mark my words." In the upper hall, a visiting lady's maid whispered the story to her mistress as she brushed her hair. "They say she is Irish, my lady," she said, bold as brass. "Irish?" the lady said. "Of course. They are always so." In a coffee house across town, a gentleman unfolded a newspaper and saw no mention yet, but the story was told anyway. "They say Hawthorne's only defense is a servant girl," someone remarked. "Fitting, perhaps, if he squandered money meant for others." "Or perhaps it shows the kind of man he is," another replied. "If he treats his servants kindly, they stand by him." These words did not reach the house that night, but the mood did. It hung in the air like mist. Margaret kept to the servants' quarters as much as possible, as Mrs. Baines had advised. She scrubbed, polished, and carried as she always did, though her mind was far from the work. Every time a door opened, she half expected to hear her name called sharply. Late in the afternoon, as she folded linens in the laundry room, a soft voice spoke behind her. "Miss Doyle." She turned. Lord Charles stood in the doorway, hat in hand. She had never seen him so deep in the servants' passageway before. "My lord," she said quickly, setting the linens aside and dropping a curtsy. "Forgive me for intruding," he said. "May I borrow a few moments of your time?" She glanced toward the inner door, where Mrs. Baines usually held court, but the housekeeper was not there. "If Mrs. Baines sees you here, my lord, she will—" Margaret began. "Mrs. Baines has been assured that I will not keep you long," he said smoothly. "Come, let us step into the little room across the hall. We will be less in the way." He moved with easy authority, clearly expecting her to follow. She did because there was nothing else she could do without being openly disrespectful. The small room across the hall was used for storing table linen and polishing cloths. It held a chair and a narrow window. Lord Charles closed the door gently behind them, leaving it not quite latched. "I will not pretend you are at your ease," he said. "These are not the circumstances in which a maid expects to speak with a gentleman. But we are connected now by a certain event in court, are we not?" She clasped her hands to keep them from twisting. "I did not mean to cause trouble, my lord," she said. "Only to tell what I know." "Trouble is a curious word," he replied. "Sometimes those who speak truth are accused of causing it, when in fact it is others who brought the real trouble forth." His tone was mild, his eyes thoughtful. "I wish to thank you," he went on. "You have given my cousin a chance he did not have when that coward Trent scuttled away. For that you deserve acknowledgement." "I did not do it for thanks," she said. "Of course not," he said. "You did it because you believed it right. That is plain enough." He tilted his head, studying her. "You must forgive me if I am blunt," he added. "You are very brave, or very reckless. I am not yet sure which." "I am neither," she said, heat rising to her cheeks. "I was afraid." "And yet you acted," he said. "Bravery is not the absence of fear, Miss Doyle. It is acting despite it." She could not tell whether he mocked her or praised her. His voice gave nothing away. "You must understand the position you're in," he continued. "By speaking as you did, you have drawn attention to yourself. Some of it may be kind, some of it will not be. The court is not a gentle place, and those who feel threatened by your words may look about for ways to discredit you." "I suppose so," she said. "But what else could I do, my lord?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You could be cautious," he said. "You could consider very carefully what you say when you are summoned again. You could avoid embellishing your story. You could refrain from mentioning certain details that might lead the court down troublesome paths." Her heart beat faster. "What details?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I am only speaking in general," he said. "You are young. You may not realize how a stray remark can be twisted. A mention of a lost paper, for instance, or of someone seen in a hallway. Courts like solid facts. They do not look kindly on servants who seem confused." He paused, letting the words sink in. "If you are thought to have tampered with any document," he added, "however innocently, you might find yourself facing questions you do not wish to answer. Questions about theft, about forgery. Those are not easy charges for a maid to bear." She swallowed. "I did not steal anything," she said. "I am sure you did not," he said quickly. "I at least believe that. But belief is not always enough when those with more power decide otherwise." He looked out the small window, then back at her. "I say this because I would not like to see you harmed by what was, I am sure, an honest impulse," he said. "You have done your part. You have reminded the court that the matter is not simple. Perhaps it is best now to let men of law untangle the rest." "You mean I should say nothing more," she said. "I mean," he replied, "that you should be careful, very careful. Speak only of what you are certain cannot be twisted. Leave out anything that might make you appear less reliable." His gaze lingered on her, steady, almost kind. "You have a life here," he said. "A position, wages you send home, no doubt. It would be a pity if all that were lost because you stepped too far into matters that are not yours to manage." He moved toward the door. "Consider my words," he said. "They are meant as friendly advice." He opened the door, then paused. "And Miss Doyle," he added without looking back, "if you should ever find yourself in real difficulty because of this affair, you may send word to me. I may be able to ease matters. It is always useful to have a friend." With that, he was gone, leaving the door half open. Margaret stood alone in the little linen room, her breath shallow. The conversation had been calm, polite, and yet she felt as if she had been walking along the edge of a high place. Was that kindness, she wondered, or a warning? She returned to her tasks on unsteady legs. Mrs. Baines eyed her but said nothing. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work, polishing, carrying, answering small calls. Her mind kept circling the same questions. Be careful. Speak only of what cannot be twisted. Do not mention a scrap of paper. That evening, when the lamps were lit and the house quieted, she finally climbed the narrow stairs to her own little room under the eaves. She pushed the door open, expecting the familiar sight, Small bed, chest, chair, the folded shawl at the foot of the bed. At first, nothing seemed amiss. Then her eyes adjusted, and she saw it. The shawl was not folded as she had left it. The lid of her small wooden box was not quite closed. A dress she had placed neatly over the chair lay crooked, half slipping to the floor, as if someone had picked it up and dropped it again. She stepped inside, her hand going cold on the latch, and realized that while she had been downstairs trying to go on with her day, someone had already been here before her, searching through the few things she possessed. For a long moment, Margaret did not move. The little room seemed to tilt around her, as if the floor had shifted. She closed the door quietly behind her, then crossed to the bed. Her shawl was indeed wrong, folded in a manner she never used, the corners not aligned. She touched it, then lifted it. The thin mattress showed a faint crease, as if someone heavier than she had sat there. Her gaze went to the small wooden box she kept under the chair. The lid was not quite flush with the sides. She sank to her knees, heart pounding, and drew it out. The box was simple, with a brass catch that did not lock. Inside were a few letters from her sister in Ireland, a ribbon, a small book of prayers. They lay disturbed, not in their usual order. Beneath the letters, beneath the false bottom she had contrived from a scrap of board and a piece of old linen, was the folded bit of parchment. Her fingers shook as she lifted the false bottom. The fragment lay there, exactly where she had left it, but it had been unfolded. She could tell by the way its creases had changed, the corners softer. Someone had taken it out, looked at it, and put it back. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Not gone. Not yet. Carefully, she unfolded it herself, spreading it on her knee. Even in the dim light she could make out the partial seal, the careful script, the broken date. Ill the 12th. The rest had been torn away. Enough remained to show the form of a contract and the promise of sums to be paid. It meant little to her eyes. To others, it might mean proof or danger. She refolded it, more neatly than the unknown visitor had, and slipped it back into its hiding place. Then she replaced the false bottom, arranged her letters, and closed the lid with a faint click. For a moment she sat there on the floor, hands in her lap, listening to the muffled sounds of the house. Footsteps on the stairs, a distant door closing, someone laughing below. Life went on, unaware that up here a maid had discovered a secret search. Who had been here? A fellow servant, curious after hearing the day's gossip. Mrs. Baines, worried what her staff might be hiding? Or someone with more serious purpose, someone who knew exactly what to look for? She did not sleep much that night. Every creak of the house made her start. She lay awake and watched the square of window go from dark to grey. By morning, the day's routine pressed in. There were fires to lay and hearths to sweep. Mrs. Baines would not accept "someone searched my room" as an excuse for slow work. At the long scrubbed table in the servants' hall, James gulped his porridge and watched her over the rim of his bowl. "You look as if you have not slept," he observed. "Nor have you," she said. He grinned faintly. "No one slept," he replied. "They were all waiting to hear if you would be turned out before dawn." "I'm still here," she said, breaking a piece of bread. "For now," another maid muttered from further down the table. "His lordship's aunt has a face like thunder." "Hush," Mrs. Baines said sharply. "Less talk, more eating. The house does not run on gossip." The maid ducked her head and applied herself to her porridge. Margaret glanced at Mrs. Baines. "Did you come up to my room last night?" she asked quietly. As if it were a small thing, Mrs. Baines frowned. "To your room?" "No. Why should I?" she answered. "No reason," Margaret said quickly. "I only wondered. Have the mice disturbed you again?" Mrs. Baines asked. "If so, speak to the under-butler. He has traps." "It is not mice," Margaret said. It was nothing. The lie tasted heavy on her tongue. She told herself she must be sure before accusing anyone, even in her own mind. After breakfast, as she scrubbed the entrance hall tiles, she heard carriage wheels outside. The sound always drew attention. Deliveries, visitors, summonses, each meant work. A footman opened the door. Margaret glimpsed a gentleman on the step, hat in hand, coat buttoned against the chill. "Mr. Silas Trent," the footman announced a moment later in the front hall. Margaret's brush paused. Trent. Back again. She kept her head down, though her ears strained. "His lordship is not receiving," the footman said. Trent's voice was smooth. "I am not here in a social capacity," he replied. "I have matters to set in order regarding his case." "Even so, sir, I was instructed—" "Show him into the morning room," another voice cut in. "Lady Agatha." "We will not turn away information. I will see him." Trent stepped past. As he did, his gaze flicked briefly toward the flagstones where Margaret knelt with her bucket. For an instant, his eyes met hers. There was no recognition in them, only the idle glance of a man inconvenienced by his surroundings. "Mind the water," he said casually, as if she had no ears for anything else. "Yes, sir," she murmured. When he had passed, she watched his back disappear toward the better rooms, so he returned when it suited him. In court, he had left Edward without a word. Yet here he was again, coat neat, voice measured, ready to explain himself. Perhaps. By mid-morning, a footman came hurrying from above. "Margaret," he said, "you're wanted in the small parlour." Her heart jumped. "Who wants me?" she asked. "His lordship," the footman said, "and you are to come at once." She wiped her hands, smoothed her apron, and followed. In the small parlour, Edward stood by the mantel. Lady Agatha sat in a chair, her back very straight. Mr. Trent occupied another chair, legs crossed elegantly, one hand resting on his knee. All three looked up when Margaret entered. "There she is," Lady Agatha said. "The cause of our present amusement." Trent's eyes sharpened as he took her in properly. "Ah," he said. "The maid." Margaret curtsied toward Edward. "You sent for me, my lord." "Yes," Edward said. "Come nearer." She stepped forward, keeping her gaze mostly on him. "Mr. Trent has been good enough to pay us a visit," Edward said. "He wishes to clarify his reasons for withdrawing from my case. I wish to clarify, my lord, that I was placed in a position that made further representation impossible," Trent corrected mildly. "Certain papers came to my attention which suggested that my continued involvement might embroil me in matters that have nothing to do with your innocence or guilt." "These papers," Edward said, "did any of them include the fragment Miss Doyle mentioned?" Trent glanced at Margaret, then back. "I have seen no fragment," he said. "Only the contracts in full which you know of already. The fragment she spoke of concerns me. A servant handling legal instruments without understanding them is a dangerous thing." "It fell behind the cabinet," Margaret said quietly. "I only picked it up." "Be silent," Lady Agatha said sharply. Edward lifted a hand. "No," he said. "She may answer. We are all in this together now, whether we like it or not." Trent studied Margaret again. "You understand, Miss Doyle, was it?" he asked. "That when you touch such things, you may place yourself under suspicion. It is unwise." "I have always been under suspicion, sir," she replied, surprising herself, "by virtue of having no name beyond my own and no property beyond what I carry. I do not see that touching one more thing changes it much." Lady Agatha made a small sound of disapproval. Trent's lips thinned. "Sharp tongue," he said. "You must be careful with it in court. Sharp tongues are easily cut." "Mr. Trent," Edward said, "Miss Doyle's testimony persuaded the magistrate to delay judgment. That cannot be undone. The question now is what further support it can be given." "Support," Trent repeated, "from a torn scrap that may or may not be what she believes. From the recollections of a servant who stands to lose her place if you are disgraced. My lord, with respect, it is a slender reed to lean upon. And yet, you leaned upon it enough to flee the court when it appeared," Edward said quietly. Colour rose in Trent's cheeks. "I withdrew because I realized my involvement might be misinterpreted," he said. "I refused to be drawn into a quarrel between you and those who may have misled you." "Who has misled me?" Edward asked. Trent hesitated, then gave a small, helpless shrug. "There are others who know more of the financial details than I," he said. "Clerks, brokers, perhaps even members of your own family. I am not in a position to accuse. I can only protect myself." "And yet you came here today," Edward said. "To do what? To warn me off? To urge me to silence my servants?" Trent's eyes flicked toward Margaret once more. "I came to urge caution," he said. "The more this matter stirs, the more mud will be flung. Some of it may stick in unexpected places. For your sake and for that of your household, it may be wiser to accept a quiet resolution." "A quiet surrender," Edward said, "to charges I deny." "A quiet compromise," Trent corrected. "A small admission of error, perhaps. Restitution. In exchange, the more serious allegations might be allowed to fade. The public is fickle. It forgets quickly if it is not constantly fed. Lady Agatha listened closely. "You see," she said to Edward, "even now there may be a way to end this without further scandal." Edward's jaw tightened. "A way that requires me to confess to actions I did not take," he said. "To agree that I misused funds entrusted to me when I did not. That is not a resolution I can accept." "There is pride and there is prudence," Lady Agatha replied. "And there is truth," Edward said. Trent rose, smoothing his coat. "I have given my advice," he said. "If you choose not to heed it, that is your prerogative. But consider your position. Consider, too, the position of those who have attached themselves to your cause. Servants who speak out of turn, for instance." His meaning was clear. Edward's eyes cooled. "Miss Doyle is under my protection," he said. "Anyone who troubles her because of what she has said will answer to me." "Protection is a fine word," Trent said, "but it does not always hold against the wind." He gave a shallow bow. "I take my leave," he said. "I hope for all our sakes that wiser counsels prevail before the court reconvenes." He left the room. The door closed. Lady Agatha exhaled. "You might at least consider his suggestion," she said. "It may be the last rope the court offers." "I will not hang from a rope of lies," Edward said. He turned to Margaret. "You may go," he said. "But one thing first. Did you speak to anyone of the fragment after leaving this room yesterday?" "No, my lord," she said. "Not to a soul." "And has anyone been to your room?" he asked. Her throat tightened. "Someone has," she said. "I do not know who. My things were disturbed." Lady Agatha stiffened. "You are sure?" she demanded. "Yes, my lady," Margaret answered. "The box where I keep my letters was opened, the shawl was moved, and the fragment. It had been unfolded." "Then you have already drawn rats to the cheese," Lady Agatha said. "Do you see what comes of meddling?" Edward's gaze darkened. "Is it still there?" he asked. "Yes, my lord," she said. "I checked. I put it back." He nodded. "From now on," he said, "we trust no one with this knowledge outside this room. If you find anything else disturbed, you come to me at once." "Yes, my lord," she said. He hesitated. "Thank you," he added quietly. She left, feeling both warmed and chilled by the attention. The days that followed seemed to move in two currents. On the surface, the house went about its business. Meals were served, silver polished, callers received. Underneath, a quiet tension flowed, touching every corner. The steward, Mr. Pritchard, began spending more time with ledgers spread across the table, his pen scratching late into the night. Margaret noticed him once as she carried a tray past the open door of his office. He looked up, his usually mild eyes troubled. "Is there anything you require, Mr. Pritchard?" she asked. He shook his head. "Only time," he said. "And figures that will stand still." She hesitated. "Is it about the case, sir?" she ventured. "In part," he said. "There are questions being asked. Sums that must be accounted for. People assume that when money goes astray, a steward must have had a hand in it." "But you did not," she said. His smile was tired. "I have tried to serve this house faithfully," he said. "That is all I can say." She wanted to say more, to tell him of the fragment, of the night in the study, but the promise she had made held her tongue. Later that week, Edward sent for her again. This time the message was brief: the study, after dinner. She went, heart quick. He sat at the desk, a stack of papers before him, sleeves rolled to the elbow. A candle burned low, casting uneven light. "Miss Doyle," he said, "I need your memory." She blinked. "My memory, my lord?" "Yes," he said. "These are account books. Pritchard and I have gone over them until the numbers dance. But you remember who came and went in this house? On certain days, certain nights. It may help." She stepped closer, wary but curious. "What do you wish to know?" she asked. He tapped a page. "Here," he said. "This entry, 2 days before the 12th. A sum paid to a Mr. Greeley. I have no recollection of meeting such a person. Do you?" She thought. "No," she said. "But I remember a man calling on Mr. Trent that day, a stranger. He did not come through the front. He used the side door and asked for Mr. Trent by name." "You saw them together?" Edward asked. "I only saw him waiting," she said, "by the stairs." Mr. Trent came down and took him to your study. I was dusting the sconces. I remember because he nearly brushed the rag from my hand. Edward frowned. Trent never mentioned such a meeting, he said. He turned another page. And here, he continued, on the 15th, a note about travelling expenses for Lord Charles. I do not recall him being away. He was, Margaret said, or at least he said he would be. He told Mrs. Baines he was visiting friends in the country, but he returned sooner than expected, in the middle of the night. I know because cook was cross she had to heat soup for him. Edward's brows rose. You see, he said, you notice what we do not. You remember what we dismiss. That is why I ask you to sit with me now. She hesitated, then pulled a small chair closer, perching on the edge. Together they went through the pages. He asked when certain tradesmen had come, when letters had arrived, when particular callers had been turned away or welcomed. She answered as best she could, dredging up details she had not thought important at the time. How do you know it was a Tuesday? He asked at one point, half amused. Because the fishmonger came that morning, she said. He comes on Tuesdays. The hall smelled of herring all day. Mrs. Baines will not forget it either. He laughed softly. I confess I am glad there are some odours I never encounter, he said. She smiled, then caught herself, straightening. Forgive me, my lord, she said. For what? He asked. For speaking as if we were equal, she said awkwardly. It is not my place. He looked at her a long moment. In this matter, he said, we are partners of a sort. You see things I cannot. I would be a fool to pretend otherwise. The word partners made her chest tighten strangely. They worked until the candle burned low. At last he set down his pen. That is enough for tonight, he said. You must rest. There is one thing more, she said softly. The letter that came 3 days before the first summons, the one with the heavy seal. You were in the front hall when it arrived. You opened it and your face changed. That was when this began, was it not? He regarded her. Yes, he said. From the Board of Trade, informing me that irregularities had been found in accounts bearing my name. I had not seen half the figures they listed. And you went to Mr. Trent, she said. I did, he answered. I assumed it must be a misunderstanding. A mistake in the clerk's office? I thought he would sort it. He smiled without humour. He sorted it by stepping away the moment it became inconvenient, he added. Not everyone stepped away, she said before she could stop herself. His gaze met hers. No, he said quietly, not everyone. Silence grew between them. Not awkward this time, but full of something unspoken. You should go, he said at last, his voice very gentle. It is late. If Mrs. Baines finds I have kept you from your bed, she will scold us both. She rose. Good night, my lord, she said. Good night, Miss Doyle, he replied. As she left the study, she felt his eyes on her back for a moment, then turned the corner and was alone. The next morning brought a letter from the court. The butler carried it on a tray to the breakfast room, where Lady Agatha and Edward sat. A message from the magistrates, my lord, he said gravely. Edward broke the seal. Margaret, passing the door with a fresh pot of tea, slowed at the sound of paper. Well? Lady Agatha demanded. They will reconvene next week, Edward said. They wish to hear further testimony from Miss Doyle and review additional accounts. Next week, Lady Agatha repeated. So soon? The sooner the better, he said. Margaret's stomach knotted. 1 week until she stood in that room again, with every eye upon her. She tried to work harder to drive the thought away. The days blurred. More visitors came and went. Some asked after Edward with polite concern. Others stayed away. Once in the hall she overheard a gentleman speaking to the butler. I should call upon his lordship, of course, he was saying, but my wife is anxious to avoid any appearance of taking sides until matters are settled. Naturally, sir, the butler replied smoothly. It struck Margaret again how quickly faces could turn. As the court day drew nearer, the tension in the house sharpened. Lady Agatha's instructions grew more precise. She fretted over her dress, over which carriage to use, over who might be seen with them. Mrs. Baines drove the servants twice as hard, determined that nothing in the house should give cause for gossip. On the eve of the hearing, Margaret climbed once more to her little room under the eaves. She locked the door, though the lock was flimsy, then knelt by the box. Her hands were cold as she lifted the lid, moved the letters, and removed the false bottom. The fragment lay there still, patient as a stone. She took it out and unfolded it. Tomorrow, perhaps, the magistrate would see it. Perhaps Edward would decide to produce it as proof. The thought made her feel as if she were standing in a doorway she could not see beyond. A floorboard creaked in the corridor. She froze, listening. The house was mostly quiet at this hour. A few coals settling in the kitchen, a murmur from below stairs, the faint rattle of a window. Another soft creak, closer this time. Someone was in the passage. She refolded the fragment quickly and closed her fingers around it. For an instant she considered leaving it where it was, but the image of someone else lifting the false bottom and finding nothing made her move. She slipped the fragment into the pocket sewn into her skirt, then replaced the board, the letters, the lid. Her heart hammered. If they searched again tonight, they would find nothing. For better or worse, the paper was with her now. The sound came again, just outside her door. A pause. The faintest touch at the handle. She rose slowly. "Who is there?" she called, trying to keep her voice steady. The handle turned. The door opened a hand's width, admitting a sliver of candlelight. A shadow fell across the floor, long and familiar, and a calm, familiar voice behind her said, "Have you found anything interesting, Miss Doyle?" She turned slowly. Lord Charles stood in the doorway, candle in hand, the light throwing his features into soft shadows. He wore no coat, only a waistcoat and shirt, as if he had not meant to be formal, yet he still carried himself like a man in a drawing room, not a narrow servant's passage. "My lord," she said. "You startled me." "Forgive me," he replied. "It seems I have a habit of appearing where I am least expected." His gaze moved over the little room, the bed, the chair, the small box tucked away. Nothing to interest a man of his rank, unless he already knew what he sought. "It is late," he went on. "You must think me a strange visitor at this hour." "A little," she answered truthfully. He smiled faintly. "The night before a hearing can unsettle anyone's sleep," he said. "I found myself walking the upper corridors to clear my head. I did not mean to intrude on your privacy." Yet here he was, with his hand on her door. "You asked if I had found anything interesting," she said carefully. "I do not understand what you mean." His eyes rested on her face, then flicked almost idly toward her skirt pocket and back again. "You are a perceptive girl," he said. "You told the magistrate about a scrap of paper. You mentioned it again, unintentionally, in my presence. I cannot help being curious." "There is nothing here that concerns you, my lord," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I think there may be a great deal here that concerns me," he replied softly. "And my cousin, and you." He stepped just inside the room, leaving the door ajar. The candlelight made the walls look closer. "When a case like this comes before the court," he said, "everyone connected to it may find themselves caught up in it. The nobleman at the center, of course, but also the men who advised him, the clerks who wrote the figures, even the servants who moved quietly through the rooms." She swallowed. "I moved quietly," she said. "I did not meddle." "Did you not?" he asked, without heat. "You picked up a fragment of a legal paper. You kept it. You hid it. And now you carry it on your person, if I am not mistaken." Her hand twitched toward her pocket and stopped. His eyes followed the movement. "You see," he murmured, "you are not only perceptive, you are also transparent." "I did not forge it," she said. "I did not steal it. It fell. I kept it because I was afraid of what they might say if I handed it over." "A perfectly reasonable fear," he said, "for a maid in your position. The law does not bend easily to favor such as you." He took another step closer. She could smell candle wax and the faint scent of starch from his shirt. "Allow me to speak plainly," he said. "That fragment, in the wrong hands, could be turned against you. It proves nothing on its own. It does, however, prove that you interfered with papers that were not yours. If the magistrate were so inclined, he could take a dim view of that." "I will tell him the truth," she said. "How I found it, why I kept it." "Truth is a fine thing," he said, "but it does not always protect those who speak it. Tomorrow, if you show that fragment, the court may decide it has been altered. They may say you cut it yourself to match your story. Do you have anyone who can swear they saw it before you touched it?" "No," she admitted. "Then you stand alone," he said. "Alone before men who may prefer a simple tale of guilt to a tangled yarn of lost papers and servant girls." He let the words hang. then lifted the candle a little higher, studying her. "I came here," he said, "to urge you once more to be cautious. Do not bind yourself too tightly to this matter. You have already done more than anyone expected. No one would blame you if tomorrow you say that in the confusion of that night you misremembered, that you cannot be sure of dates, that the paper might have been something else entirely." "That would be a lie," she said. "It would be a correction," he answered smoothly. "Memory is a fickle thing. The law understands that." "My memory is not fickle," she said. "I know what I saw." He sighed, as if disappointed. "Then at least promise me this," he said. "If you are pressed about the fragment, do not name every person you suspect. Do not drag others into it without proof. Leave my name out of your mouth in that place, Miss Doyle. It will not help you, or my cousin." His voice remained calm, but the air in the room felt suddenly thinner. "You think I suspect you," she said quietly. "I think you suspect many things," he replied. "Some may be true, others may be shadows. You are not well placed to distinguish them all." He glanced around her modest room again, as if measuring its narrowness. "Believe me when I tell you," he said, "that you are playing at a game whose stakes you cannot fully see. If you insist on continuing, I cannot stop you, but I will not pretend it is wise." She lifted her chin. "I may not see all the stakes," she said, "but I see a man in danger of being called a thief when he is not. I cannot pretend that is nothing. Even if, in saving him, you ruin yourself?" he asked. "I will not be the one who ruins me," she said. "If others choose to do it, that is on them." Something like reluctant admiration flickered in his eyes. "You are a stubborn girl," he said. "I begin to understand why my cousin allows you such freedom." "He allows me nothing," she said. "I asked no permission to tell the truth." "Then perhaps," he said, "it is time you did." He stepped back toward the door. "Remember what I have said," he added. "Be careful. The court is not the only place where judgments are made." He inclined his head, then was gone, his candlelight fading along the passage. When the sound of his footsteps died, Margaret let herself sag against the bedpost for a moment. Her legs felt weak. Her pocket felt heavy. "Be careful," he had said. "Do not name every person you suspect." She had not said she would obey. The next day, the house stirred earlier than usual. Clothes were brushed, boots shined, carriages prepared. The air held the crisp chill of anticipation and dread. In the servants' hall, Mrs. Baines stood with arms folded. "Margaret," she said, "you will come with us to the court again. You are to ride in the second carriage as before. Keep your cap neat. Answer when spoken to, otherwise keep your eyes down." "Yes, Mrs. Baines," Margaret said. "And remember," the housekeeper added softer, "your words do not belong only to you now. They touch us all." Margaret met her gaze. "I know," she said. The ride to the court passed in a blur. The same streets, the same curious faces at windows. This time, though, Margaret felt the weight of the fragment against her hip with every jolt of the carriage. In the main vehicle ahead, Edward sat opposite Lady Agatha. Neither spoke much. Lord Charles rode alongside on horseback, his posture easy, his expression unreadable. At the courthouse, the crowd seemed larger than before. News traveled fast. People who had not troubled themselves with the first hearing had come now, eager to see if the story of the maid was true. "That's her," someone whispered as Margaret passed. "The Irish girl who stopped the sentence." She kept her eyes on the steps. Inside, the same great room awaited. High ceiling, long benches, raised bench for the magistrates. Margaret's stomach clenched at the sight of it, but she walked to the place the clerk indicated for witnesses to await their call. Edward took his place once more at the front. He looked calmer than he had at the first hearing, but only just. His gaze traveled the gallery, found her, and paused. He gave the slightest nod. It steadied her. The magistrates entered. Everyone stood, then sat. "The court resumes in the matter of the Crown against Edward Hawthorne," the clerk intoned. "All parties present." "We are informed," the chief magistrate said, "that new testimony will be given and additional material presented. Let us proceed with dispatch." Fielding rose. "My lord," he said, "since the last session the court has heard from a member of the accused's household who claimed certain knowledge of events on the night a contentious contract was presented. I submit that her recollection is of limited reliability. However, if she is to stand by it, Let her do so under proper scrutiny. The magistrate inclined his head. Call the witness, he said. The clerk's voice rang out. Margaret Doyle. Her name sounded different here, bigger, exposed. She stood, smoothing her apron with damp palms, and walked forward. The rustle of the crowd followed her like a current. At the witness stand, the clerk held out the book again. She laid her hand on it, repeating the oath without stumbling. You are still in service to Lord Hawthorne? The magistrate asked. Yes, my lord, she said. You understand that lying to this court is a grave offence? He asked. Yes, my lord, she answered. I have no wish to lie. Very well, he said. You have already spoken of the night in April when a paper was presented to Lord Hawthorne. We would hear your account once more from the beginning, and then we shall have questions. She told it again. The tray, the study, Mr. Trent. The pen picked up and set down. The refusal. She kept her voice steady, though she could feel her heart pounding. When she reached the part about the fragment, the magistrate raised a hand. A moment, he said. You mentioned a scrap of paper. Do you still have it? She felt the room lean toward her. Yes, my lord, she said. I brought it with me today. Fielding's head snapped up. You brought it, he said. Of your own accord? At Lord Hawthorne's request, she answered. He thought the court should see it if you wished. Produce it, the magistrate said. Her fingers felt stiff as she reached into her pocket and drew out the folded fragment. She handed it to the clerk, who carried it to the bench. The magistrate unfolded it carefully. He studied it, then passed it to his colleagues. It appears to be part of a larger document, he said. We see sums, a seal, and a date. The 12th of April. The missing portion may have contained a signature, or anything at all, Fielding put in. We cannot know, and we have only the maid's word for how it came into her possession. We shall hear that now, the magistrate said. Miss Doyle, describe how you found this fragment and what you did with it step by step. She did. How it had fallen behind the cabinet, how she had picked it up, recognized the seal, how she had feared to show it to anyone, remembering warnings about servants and papers, how she had hidden it in her box, then taken it to her person when she suspected someone had searched her room. You admit, Fielding said, seizing on the last part, that you hid it and did not tell anyone for weeks, perhaps months. Yes, she said. I was afraid. Afraid of what? He demanded. Of being accused, she said. Of theft. Of lies. I have no protection, sir, but my work. If they had said I took it to sell or to trick someone, who would believe me against a gentleman? A murmur ran through the room at that. You say they, Fielding said. Who are they? Anyone who wished to be rid of me, she said quietly. You chose then, he said, to remain silent while your master was accused in print and in society of crimes that might have led to his imprisonment. Shame pricked her like pins. I did, she said, and I was wrong. What changed? He asked. What made you speak at last? I saw how it went in court, she said. I saw Mr. Trent leave. I saw Lord Hawthorne stand alone. I heard you say he must have signed on that night, and I knew he had not. I could not bear it. So this is a matter of feeling, Fielding said, not fact. It is both, she replied. I saw what I saw, and I felt what I felt. The magistrate leaned forward. Miss Doyle, he said, has anyone urged you to speak? Promised you reward if Lord Hawthorne is cleared? No, my lord, she said. No one promised me anything. Has anyone urged you not to speak? He asked. She hesitated. Lord Charles's calm face rose in her mind. His words about caution, about not naming names. Yes, my lord, she said. The room held its breath. Who? The magistrate asked. She drew in a breath. Mr. Trent warned me that servants who meddle in papers are often blamed, she said. He spoke of the danger, and Lord Charles Hawthorne also spoke to me. He said I should be very careful what I say. He advised me not to bring up the fragment. A rustle swept the benches. Lord Charles, seated behind the bar with other gentlemen, sat very straight. Fielding pounced. "For you impugn a nobleman's motives based on a private conversation?" he asked. "Did he threaten you? Did he use any words that could be taken as coercion?" "No," she said honestly. "He did not threaten. He said he was concerned for me. He said the court might not be kind. In other words," Fielding said, "he offered friendly advice. You have turned it into something darker." "No," she said. I tell it as it was. I do not say he meant harm. I say he wished me to be silent about something that might help Lord Hawthorne. Because he thought it might hurt you, Fielding insisted. You admit he spoke of danger to you, not to himself. Yes, she said. Then his caution may have been well meant, the magistrate said. We cannot build intent from this alone. He shifted his gaze. Mr. Fielding, he added, let us not turn this into a trial of every man who has spoken a word of warning. We are here for facts. Fielding pursed his lips. Very well, my lord, he said. The facts remain these. We have a fragment, origin uncertain, kept in secret by a servant who admits to fear and delay. We have her memory, which favors her employer, whose generosity may influence her. This is far from solid proof. And yet, the magistrate said, we also have contracts with dates and signatures that are now cast into doubt. We have testimony that the accused refused to sign on the very night the prosecution claims he did. We have a man of law who withdrew without clear explanation. All of this must be weighed. He turned to Edward. Lord Hawthorne, he said. Stand. Edward rose. You have heard your servant's account, the magistrate said. Do you confirm that you refused to sign a contract on the 12th of April? I do, Edward said. I remember it clearly. Mr. Trent pressed me. I declined. I told him I would not sign until I understood every term. Did you at any later time sign a contract of similar nature? The magistrate asked. No, my lord, Edward said. I never knowingly authorized the transfer of funds in the manner described. If my signature appears upon such a document, it was placed there without my consent or by means I do not comprehend. You are suggesting forgery, Fielding said. I am suggesting, Edward replied, that someone used my name and my trust ill. I do not know yet who, but if the court examines the path of the money, I believe it will find others benefited where I did not. The magistrate exchanged a glance with his colleagues. The court has already begun to examine such paths, he said. We have received preliminary reports from clerks and stewards involved in the transactions. The picture emerging is not as simple as the prosecution first presented. Fielding frowned. My lord, he said. The magistrate folded his hands. Certain payments, he said, were diverted to accounts not in Lord Hawthorne's name. Some bear the marks of intermediaries connected to others in his circle. These inquiries are not complete, but combined with today's testimony, they give this court pause. He looked at Margaret again. Miss Doyle, he said, you have exposed yourself to scrutiny by speaking here. Whatever your motives, you have done so in the face of fear. The court notes that. He shifted to Edward. Lord Hawthorne, until our inquiries are finished, we cannot pronounce a final formal exoneration, he said. However, we also cannot, on the evidence now before us, justify proceeding to a verdict of guilty. The balance has shifted. Fielding opened his mouth, but the magistrate raised a hand. Enough for today, he said. The charges against Lord Hawthorne are suspended pending further investigation of other parties. He will remain at liberty. The court will likely reconvene only to close the matter, not to pursue it further against him. A murmur of surprise and relief moved through the room. Mr. Fielding, the magistrate added, your zeal is admirable, but justice must be even-handed. We will not make a convenient example of one man if the fault lies in several. He struck the table lightly. This session is adjourned. The sound of benches scraping, voices rising, filled the air. Margaret felt lightheaded. Her legs obeyed by habit as she stepped down from the stand and moved aside. She had the strange sense that the room was both larger and less threatening now. The weight at her chest eased, though the fragment was no longer in her pocket. The clerk had taken it for the records. Miss Doyle. She turned. Edward stood a few steps away, having forced his way through the knot of people at the front. For once, no one immediately accosted him. They were too busy talking to one another, digesting the magistrate's words. My lord, she said. He looked at her in a way he never had before. There was no distance in his eyes, no careful reserve, only raw gratitude and something deep and warm behind it. You have done more for me than any man in that room, he said quietly. I do not know how to thank you. You do not need to thank me, she said. I owed you the truth. You owed me nothing, he said. I am the one who owes you. My good name, my freedom, possibly my life as I know it. He hesitated. Come, he said. There is a small room along the corridor where we may speak without 100 ears listening. She followed him out through a side door. The magistrate's clerk barely glanced at them. There were papers to gather, lawyers to placate. The side corridor was cool and quieter, lined with narrow windows. Edward stopped near one and turned to face her. "I have been many things in my life," he said. "Proud, careless at times, too trusting of men with neat documents and smooth tongues, but I never thought I would be a man who depends upon the courage of a maid to stand." "You are not less for it," she said. "Only more human." He gave a short laugh. "More human," he repeated. "That is not a description my aunt will relish." "Lady Agatha may not relish many things today," Margaret replied. He looked at her more closely. "They were not kind to you," he said. "Fielding. The questions. Dragging your delay into the light." "I deserved that," she said. "I should have come sooner." "You were afraid," he said, "and with reason. You have no shield but your own conscience. I at least have a name, an estate, friends who may yet return when the smoke clears. You have nothing but your work. And yet you risked all of it." "It did not seem like risking at the time," she answered. "It seemed like not drowning." He frowned slightly. "Not drowning?" he asked. "To stand there and say nothing," she said, "when I knew they were wrong. That felt like watching someone flail in deep water and turning away. I could not do it." He was silent for a moment. "I will never forget the sound of your voice in that room," he said softly. Rising from the back when all others were content to murmur, it cut through the babble like a bell. She shifted, unsettled by the intensity in his gaze. "Do you think it is over?" she asked. "Or will they find a way to bring you back there?" "I think," he said slowly, "that the worst is past. The magistrate has signaled where his doubts lie now. Others will be more interesting prey than I. That does not mean there will be no whispers, but whispers are easier to live with than chains." He took a breath as if gathering himself. "Margaret," he said, dropping the formality for the first time, "I must tell you something while I still have the courage of this day." She stared at him. "You must not," she began. "Not if it is something you will regret when the excitement has faded." "You do not yet know what I will say," he replied. "I can guess," she said. "I am not blind. I have seen how you look at me now." He smiled, a little ruefully. "Have I been so transparent?" he asked. "Perhaps only to someone who has had cause to look back," she said. He stepped closer, but not so close as to alarm her. His voice remained low. "I have come to regard you not as a servant who performed an extraordinary act, but as a person whose courage and mind I admire beyond measure," he said. "When I think of the days ahead, I cannot imagine them without you in them, not in the shadows, but in the light beside me." Her throat tightened. "My lord," she whispered, "do not say such things. They will tear you apart in drawing rooms across London." "Let them," he said. "Those who deserted me when I was accused have already shown their measure. I do not fear losing their good opinion now." "But I fear for you," she said, "for what it will cost." "It is not a cost I ask you to tally on my behalf," he said gently. "I ask only this. Do you feel nothing beyond duty when you look at me? If you tell me your heart is untouched, I will say no more." She opened her mouth, then closed it. The safe answer sat on her tongue, waiting. She could say, "I respect you, my lord," and nothing more. It would close the door he held open and let him retreat with dignity. But she could not force the lie past her lips. "I do not know when it began," she said slowly. "Perhaps when I saw you stand alone at that bench. Perhaps earlier, when you thanked me in the study and did not speak down to me as so many would. I tried to think only of my duties, but my thoughts wandered." His eyes softened. "Then we are both guilty," he said. "It does not change what we are," she said quickly. "You are an earl, I am a maid. The world does not take kindly to such crossings." "The world has shown itself very flawed in its judgment," he replied. "I am no longer inclined to bow to it as blindly as before." "You speak as if you could set it aside with a word," she said, "but there will be pressure, from your family, from those who depend upon you. They will say I overreached myself, that I spoke in court to bind you to me." "If they say that," he said calmly, "they insult me more than you, as if I were a man so easily snared." "You know that is how they speak," she said. "Not with sense, but with habit." He studied her face. "I cannot ask you for an answer here in a courthouse corridor," he said. "That would be unfair. Too much has happened in too short a time. I will only say this. I do not intend to let gratitude be the only bond between us. When this matter is formally laid to rest, when the last paper is filed and the last gossip fluttered through, I will come to you again, not as your master, but as a man who loves you. The word hung between them, simple and clear. She drew in a shaky breath. You are very certain, she said. I am, he answered, for once in my life. And if I am less brave then than I was on the witness stand? She asked. He smiled. Then I will remind you how you faced a hall full of strangers and told them the truth, he said. And I will give you the time you need. Voices swelled at the end of the corridor. Lady Agatha's tones rose above the rest, edged with impatience. Edward, she called. We must leave before we are crushed by curious eyes. He glanced that way, then back at Margaret. We must go, he said. Are you well enough to walk? Has this day taken too much from you? I will be all right, she said. I have work yet to do. He bowed his head slightly. You have already done more work for me than I had any right to expect, he said. Whatever comes next, remember this. You are no longer invisible to me, Margaret Doyle, and nothing the world says will make you so again. He stepped away, rejoining his aunt at the far end. Lady Agatha cast a sharp look toward Margaret, then tucked her hand into Edward's arm as they walked toward the main doors. Margaret remained by the narrow window for a moment longer, watching dust motes turn in the pale light. The court behind her buzzed with noise, but inside she felt a strange, fragile calm. The worst was past. The truth had been spoken. A future she had never dared to imagine had been named aloud, not as a dream but as a promise to be weighed and considered when the dust settled. Spring came early that year. It crept into London in small ways, lighter mornings, softer air. But in the Hawthorne house the first true sign was not a bud or a bird. It was an envelope. Margaret was crossing the front hall with a polished tray when the butler opened the door and accepted it from a liveried messenger. The seal on the paper caught the light. For Lord Hawthorne, the messenger said. The butler glanced at the crest and stiffened. Very good, he replied. Wait here. He turned and almost collided with Margaret. Mind yourself, girl, he said automatically, then checked. You may as well bring the tray to the breakfast room now. His lordship will want his tea when he reads this. Margaret's heart jolted. Is it from the court? She asked. It bears the mark, he said, lowering his voice. We shall know soon enough. She carried the tray in, hands steady by sheer will. Edward sat at the table, a newspaper untouched beside his plate. Lady Agatha stirred her tea as if it had done something to offend her. Lord Charles's chair stood empty. It had been empty for several weeks now. The butler entered behind her. A letter for you, my lord, he said, setting the envelope by Edward's hand. From the magistrates? Edward asked. Yes, my lord, the butler replied. Margaret moved to the sideboard, pretending to adjust a dish. Her eyes stayed on Edward's fingers as he broke the seal and unfolded the paper. He read quickly at first, then more slowly. His shoulders, always so firm, lowered by a fraction. The line of his mouth softened. Well, Lady Agatha demanded, do not sit there like a sphinx. What do they say? He looked up. The charges are formally dismissed, he said. The court finds insufficient evidence to proceed against me. They note serious irregularities in the accounts of certain intermediaries. The matter is referred onward, but not in my name. Lady Agatha let out a breath she had held for months. At last, she whispered. They have come to their senses. Edward read further. They state, he added, that while oversight may have been lacking on my part in delegating too much authority, there is no proof of deliberate fraud. My reputation is restored in the eyes of the law. In the eyes of society as well, one would hope, Lady Agatha said briskly. Law may forgive, but gossip is slower. He folded the letter carefully. I will take law first, he said. Society can catch up as it pleases. Margaret could not help a small sound escape her. It was half laugh, half sigh. Edward's gaze flicked to her. For a moment, the formality between master and maid melted. He looked like a man who wished to cross the room and speak to her as an equal. Mrs. Baines, Lady Agatha called instead. The housekeeper appeared in the doorway as if conjured. See that the staff hears the news properly. I will not have it mangled in the pantry. Yes, my lady, Mrs. Baines said. She nodded toward Margaret. "Take the tray back," she said, "and try not to drop it for joy." "I will not, Mrs. Baines," Margaret answered, though her hands trembled as she carried it out. In the servants' hall the air crackled. "What did they say?" James asked before she had set the tray down. "They would not tell us." "He is cleared," she said simply. "The charges are dismissed." A cheer went up, quickly hushed by Mrs. Baines's hand. "This is a house of servants, not a tavern," the housekeeper said. "But yes, his lordship is free. You may be quietly glad about it." "Quietly glad," James repeated, grinning. "I think I can manage that." Margaret laughed, the sound strange in her own ears. Later that day, Edward sent for her. The message was the same as so many times before: the study. Only now the word did not make her stomach knot. It fluttered instead. When she entered, he stood by the window looking out at the small rectangle of garden beyond the townhouse. The letter lay open on the desk beside him. He turned when he heard the door. "Margaret," he said. "My lord," she answered. He smiled faintly. "Will you never grow accustomed to saying my name without that title?" he asked. "It is how things are done," she said. "Things have been done very badly in many ways," he replied. "Perhaps it is time some customs learn to bend." He gestured to the letter. "You know the contents?" he asked. "Only that you are cleared," she said. "Mrs. Baines told us." "She would," he said. "I think she nearly smiled herself. The court has done what it should have done months ago. They have followed the money and found interest in places that are not mine." He picked up the letter and tapped a finger against a paragraph. "Mr. Trent," he said, "is strongly censured. The language is polite, but the meaning is clear. He closed his eyes to too much. He will not be trusted in such cases again." "And Lord Charles?" she asked quietly. A shadow crossed his expression. "The inquiries revealed that funds traveled through accounts connected to him," Edward said. "He insists he did not know their source. Perhaps he speaks some part of the truth. Perhaps not. It hardly matters now." "Where is he?" she asked. "He left London before the letter arrived," Edward said. "He spoke of visiting the continent. I suspect he will remain abroad for some time. It is easier to be talked about at a distance." Margaret remembered the calm voice in her doorway, the warning, the almost kind concern. "Did you accuse him?" she asked. "No," Edward said. "I laid facts before the magistrates. I did not name him as an enemy. I told myself that losing his place in our family and his good standing in the world is punishment enough. We have known each other since childhood. I cannot wish him dragged by chains." "I would not wish that either," she said. He studied her. "You see," he said, "we think more alike than you realize." She dropped her gaze, suddenly unsure. "You have your family back," she said. "Your name. Your friends will return." "Some of them will," he said. "Others will not. The ones who stayed away quietly these months may stay away still. That is no loss." He took a step closer. "And you," he said. "What of you? Have you your life back as it was?" "I rise with the dawn," she said. "I scrub and polish. I carry trays and fold linens. In that sense, yes. And in other senses?" he asked. She hesitated. "In other senses, nothing is as it was," she said. "I have stood in a court and spoke when all advised silence. I have had gentlemen address me as if my words mattered. I have seen you look at me as you do now. I cannot unlearn any of it." He reached for the letter again, then set it aside instead, as if deciding something. "There is one more matter to settle," he said. "The most important, to my mind." Her heart began to pound. "In the corridor at the court," he continued, "I said I would come to you when this affair was closed. I said I would speak not as your master, but as a man." "I remember," she whispered. "I thought of waiting still," he said, "of giving you time to grow used to the idea. But time has not dulled what I feel. It has only made it sharper." He moved to stand directly in front of her, not so close as to overshadow her, but close enough that she could see every line of his face. "I love you, Margaret," he said simply. "I have come to admire your courage, your honesty, your mind, your heart. I find I cannot bear the thought of living in this house without you, not as a voice at the back, but as the person beside me." Tears stung her eyes before she could stop them. "You make it sound very easy," she said, her voice unsteady, "as if the world will simply step aside and let us walk." "It will not," he said. My aunt will be displeased. Some in society will sneer. There will be doors closed to us that might otherwise have been open. But I have seen those same people close their doors already when I was accused. I know now how brittle their favor is. I would rather live honestly with you than politely among hypocrites. You speak bravely, she said. But this is not just gossip. It is your name, your inheritance, the Hawthorne line. You think I have forgotten it? He asked gently. I have considered it every night. I have weighed it against the life I imagine without you, and every time the same thought returns. What is a name worth if it chains me to a loveless existence? She gave a shaky laugh. You were not brutalized by lovelessness before, she said. You were admired. I was tolerated, he corrected. Welcomed for my title, not myself. You saw me when I was stripped of that, and you stood. He took a breath. I will not press you, he said. If you tell me you cannot face the whispers, I will ask no more. I will find you another place, a good one, safe, and I will carry this feeling quietly. But if you can bear it, if you can imagine sharing my life with all its complications, I would ask you to marry me. The word fell into the small study with surprising softness. Marry, she repeated, barely audible. Yes, he said. Not as an arrangement, not as a gratitude, but as my equal in all that matters. I would promise before God and men to honor you, to listen when you speak, to leave you free to speak. Margaret stared at him. Images crowded her mind. Her mother's hands in a small Irish cottage, her father saying goodbye at the dock. Mrs. Baines's sharp eyes, Lady Agatha's cold ones, the magistrate's bench, the servants' hall. You offer a life I never dreamed, she whispered, and a weight I always feared. It is both, he said. I will not lie. You say I would be your equal, she said, yet people will always see the maid who rose too high. They will say I snared you. I will answer them if they dare say it to my face, he replied. And if they say it behind my back, that is their shame, not yours. They will say you dishonor your class, she said. I will tell them my class dishonored itself when it turned its head from justice, he answered. You are very determined, she said, a tremor of laughter under the tears. On this, yes, he replied. She pressed her hands together as if she could hold her heart still that way. When I was a girl, she said slowly, I thought my life would be simple. Work, save, perhaps send enough home that my sister could marry more comfortably. I never thought of myself as someone who might stand in a place of honor beside a man like you. You stood in a place of more honor than any titled lady, he said, at that witness stand. She smiled through the tears. I do not know how to be an earl's wife, she said. I know how to sweep his hearth. You will learn the first as you once learned the second, he said, and you will teach me more than I will ever teach you. She searched his face, looking for any hint of doubt. She found none. Very well, she said quietly. Then I will be brave one more time. His breath caught. My lord, she went on, straightening, I will marry you. He closed his eyes for a second, as if steadying himself, then opened them shining. Thank you, he said simply. He took her hands in his, not in command, but in reverence. There will be much to arrange, he said, much to endure, perhaps. But this moment, this yes, is the foundation. I will build our life on it. She squeezed his fingers. I will need a new gown, she said, half laughing, half crying. Mrs. Baines will insist. He laughed softly. She will, he said, and my aunt will argue about fabrics. Let them. It will give them something to do while we are busy being happy. Lady Agatha did argue. When Edward told her that afternoon, in the same drawing room where she had once scolded him for allowing a maid to speak, she sat very still for a long time. Say it again, she said at last. I intend to marry Margaret Doyle, he repeated. She is the woman I love. A servant, she said. Irish, without name, without fortune. With a spine of iron and a heart of gold, he said. Name and fortune are less important to me now than I once believed. You will be laughed at, she warned. I was laughed at already, he replied, for standing accused. I survived. You will be pitied, she added. Perhaps, he said, by people whose pity I do not desire. She looked at him for a long time, something fierce and sore in her eyes. Your father would have had a fit, she said. Your grandfather would have cut you off. Both are beyond scolding me now, he said gently. You, however, are not. If you wish to withdraw from the house to avoid the scandal, I will understand." "Withdraw?" she snapped. "I have managed this house through worse storms than this." He raised an eyebrow. "Worse," he echoed. She sighed, some tension leaving her shoulders. "How you are stubborn," she said again. "You will not be moved, I see it." "I will not," he admitted. She rose and went to the window, staring out. "The girl," she said. "Does she understand what awaits her? The eyes, the whispers, the constant sense of being weighed and found wanting." "She understands fear," he said, "and speaks anyway. I think she will manage." Lady Agatha was silent for a time. "Bring her to me," she said at last. "If I am to endure this, I will at least look at the woman who has turned my house upside down." Margaret came when summoned, palms damp, back straight. "Margaret," Lady Agatha said, without preamble, "do you know why you are here?" "His lordship told me he spoke to you," Margaret answered. "About our intention." "Intention," Lady Agatha repeated, as if tasting the word. "You have bold intentions for a maid." "It is his intention as much as mine, my lady," Margaret said quietly. "I never asked for his regard." "No," Lady Agatha said. "You only won it by doing what no one else dared. A very clever way to catch a husband." Margaret flinched but did not drop her gaze. "If you believe I spoke in court to ensnare him," she said, "then I am sorry I gave that impression. I would have spoken if I had been 50 and plain and certain of being sent away for it. I spoke because I could not live with myself otherwise." Lady Agatha's eyes narrowed. "How you answer me without cringing," she observed. "That is something. Tell me this, if I begged you now, as a woman who has kept this family's name all these years, to leave this house and free my nephew from this madness, would you do it?" The question cut like a knife. Margaret felt it all the way to her bones. "If he asked it, I would," she said hoarsely. "If he told me he doubted his choice, I would go with what grace I could. I will not hold him by force of my tears. But he has not asked. He has held my hands and asked the opposite." Lady Agatha watched her closely. "You do love him?" she asked. "Yes," Margaret said simply. "I love him as a man, not as an earl. If he were stripped of his title tomorrow, I would still say yes." "And you would bear his children to be little half-Irish, half-scullery nobility?" Lady Agatha pressed, though her voice trembled on the edge of something less harsh. "If God sends them," Margaret said, "I would raise them to stand by what is right, even when courts and crowds are wrong." A sound escaped Lady Agatha that might, in a softer person, have been a laugh. "Stubborn," she murmured. "Both of you." She moved to her chair and sat down heavily. "I cannot pretend I rejoice," she said. "It goes against everything I have been taught. But I am not blind. I saw the way you stood in that courtroom. I saw the way he looks at you now. He has chosen. If I fight him, I will lose. And I have no wish to lose him from my life entirely." Margaret exhaled slowly. "What will you do, my lady?" she asked. Lady Agatha straightened her shoulders. "I will endure it," she said. "And if we must endure, we may as well do it with some grace. You shall not go to the altar in a servant's dress. I will see to your gown myself. If we are to shock London, we will at least look well while doing so." Tears sprang to Margaret's eyes again, but this time they were mixed with something warm. "Thank you, my lady," she whispered. "Do not thank me yet," Lady Agatha said briskly. "I will be a hard mistress still, for your own good. Sit. We will discuss fabric." The wedding was not grand by the standards of the highest circles. There were no dukes, no ambassadors, no royal carriages lined outside. But the little church near the Hawthorne townhouse had never seen so much curiosity gathered at its doors. Neighbours peered from windows. Townsfolk lingered on the opposite pavement. Servants from other houses found reasons to pass by at just the right moment. "Is it true?" a woman in a plain bonnet asked her friend. "He is marrying his maid?" "They say she stood up to magistrates," the friend replied. "Perhaps it is he who is marrying above himself." Inside the church, the air smelled of wax and flowers. Lady Agatha sat in the front pew, spine straight, chin lifted. Beside her, the butler and Mrs. Baines occupied seats of honor unusual for people of their station. James stood near the back, grinning from ear to ear. "Look at her," he whispered to the scullery maid beside him as the organ began to play. "Our Margaret." She walked up the aisle on the arm of Mr. Pritchard, the steward, who had insisted on taking the place usually given to a father. "It would be my honor," he had said, "if you will allow it." Her gown was simple but well made, the fabric of good quality, the lines graceful. Lady Agatha's hand had clearly been involved. There was nothing showy, nothing that begged for comment, only quiet dignity. Margaret's hair, usually tucked away, was dressed more carefully, but not in a style that denied who she had been. When she reached the front, Edward turned to her. His eyes held no doubt, no apology, only joy. "You look beautiful," he murmured. "You look like a man who has survived a storm," she whispered back. The vicar began the service. The words were old, familiar, but to Margaret they felt new. Love, honor, comfort, keep. In sickness and in health, for better, for worse. All those things had already been tested in shadow. Now they were brought into the light. "Edward, will you have this woman to be your wedded wife?" the vicar asked. "I will," he said, clear and steady. "Margaret, will you have this man to be your wedded husband?" She met Edward's eyes. "I will," she said. When he slid the ring onto her finger, his hand trembled. "With this ring I thee wed," he said softly, "and all my worldly goods I thee endow." She smiled. "I have no worldly goods but my heart," she replied, "but that I give freely." There was a murmur of amusement in the pews, quickly hushed. Lady Agatha's mouth twitched upward for the first time in months. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the vicar said. "Those whom God hath joined together, let no man put asunder." Outside the church the light seemed brighter. Bells rang, not loudly but firmly. The small crowd pressed closer. "There they are," someone said. "The Earl and his maid." "The Earl and his Countess," another corrected. "You had better learn to say it right." Edward held Margaret's hand as they descended the steps. For a moment he paused and raised their joined hands, not in boastful display, but as if to say, "Yes, this is real. Look if you must." He leaned toward her. "Are you well?" he asked softly. "I am happy," she said, as if testing the word in her mouth. "It feels strange and right all at once." "It will grow less strange," he said, "and I hope never less right." Back at the house there was a modest celebration. No grand ball, no endless procession of titled guests. Instead, a dinner with a handful of true friends who had not deserted him, and a special meal below stairs where Mrs. Baines allowed wine and even a little song. "To her ladyship," James declared, lifting his cup, "and to his lordship who had the sense to see what was under his nose." Margaret laughed, cheeks flushed. "Enough of that," Mrs. Baines said, though she smiled. "She will have a head the size of a pumpkin if you go on." Later, when the guests had departed and the house grew quiet, Edward and Margaret walked in the small garden behind the townhouse. The night air was cool, the sky faintly clouded. "Do you hear it?" he asked. "Hear what?" she said. "The silence," he replied. "No lawyers, no magistrates, no whispers pressing at the door, just leaves and your footsteps." She listened. "It is a good sound," she said. He stopped beneath a young tree and turned to her. "I meant what I said before the vicar," he said. "All my worldly goods, my name, my home, my faults and my attempts at bettering them, they are yours now as much as mine. And my courage," she said, "my stubbornness, my accent, they are yours. I want every part," he said. She looked back at the house, at the windows where so much had happened, at the little rooms above where she had once lain awake, fearing knocks at the door, at the big rooms where she would now be expected to sit, speak, receive. "Do you think," she asked slowly, "that some girl in a servants' hall somewhere will hear our story and believe she too has a voice worth using?" "I hope so," he said, "though I hope she will not need to use it in a courtroom." "If she must," Margaret said, "I hope she does not stand alone." He lifted her hand to his lips, a simple gesture, reverent. "You have taught me that help can come from any place," he said, "even from the back row of a crowded court." "And you have taught me," she answered, "that a man born into privilege can still choose what is right, even when it costs him." They stood there for a while, hand in hand, listening to the quiet. The world beyond their walls would go on judging. Some would never accept that an earl had married his maid. Some would say it was folly. Others, in quieter corners, would tell the tale as proof that justice sometimes found its way, not through polished speeches, but through the clear, steady voice of someone no one had thought to hear. In years to come, Children in the Hawthorne household would ask their mother why strangers sometimes stared when she walked into a room. Margaret would smile and say, "Because once, long ago, I forgot to be afraid of them." And when she lay down at night beside the man she had chosen, with no bars between them and no lies hanging over them, she would remember the girl who had gripped a wooden rail at the back of a court and decided that silence was no longer bearable. She would send a quiet thanks into the dark for that moment, and for every step that followed, and for the hand that now clasped hers as they walked forward together, unashamed, into whatever days awaited them. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.